Thank you everyone for taking the time to join us. My name is Shaz and I'm the Project Officer at the Neighbourhood Justice Centre. So the NJC opened in 2007 and is Australia's first and only community justice centre, as well as the world's first international mental community court. The centre is a part of a global network of over 80 community justice centres worldwide and sits within the Specialist Courts and Programs Division of the Magistrates Court of Victoria. So this session is the first instalment of a 4-part speaker series where you can hear from the Neighbourhood Justice Centre and other organisations about how they are supporting their local communities during the pandemic. So in this session, we'll be exploring community justice in youth, and our panellists will be exploring key concerns for young people arising out of the pandemic and discuss youth-focused community justice. So today we'll be hearing from Monica, who is a Yarra Youth Ambassador for her local community in the city of Yarra. We'll hear from Selba, who is the CEO/founder of Afri Ozcare. And then we'll be hearing from Kwan, who is the Neighbourhood Justice Officer at the NJC. So just to start us off, I'm going to briefly introduce Monica, who's going to be talking about increasing mental health concerns for young people during the pandemic and how this has impacted relationships with police. So Monica is a Yarra Youth Ambassador for her local community. As a Yarra Youth Ambassador, she advocates for young people about issues affecting them, such as racism and stereotyping of people of colour. The Yarra Youth Ambassador program is run by the City of Yarra Council and enables young people to give a voice to the underrepresented young members in their local community. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to hand over to Monica.
Hi, everybody. I'm Monica. Thank you very much for that introduction. I'm going to be speaking about COVID's effect on young people and as well as youths of colour dealing with racism specifically in Australia. In regards to where I'm from, Fitzroy, it's a little community in Yarra, and everyone's just a big happy family. And as a Yarra Youth Ambassador, I've been able to speak and engage with a lot of the kids. I've been able to hear what they're dealing with, their issues, and with COVID going on specifically, it's been really tough on them. And I speak for a lot of them when they specifically state that they feel trapped and they don't really know how to deal with some of the issues going on around the world right now, especially the pandemic going on. And it's pretty easy to imagine how awful it's been affecting young people's mental health specifically. These are official statistics from the Australian Institution of Health and Welfare as of the 25th of the 6th of this year. So up to 57% of youths were worried about being isolated from friends and schoolmates since lockdown has prevented a lot of them from going back to school and continuing with their studies. And up to 67% were worried about the disruption to their studies with exams happening just around the corner with the end of the year coming up. And we're still in lockdown in Victoria. It's very tough on them and it's added extra stress to what they usually would deal with. And up to 47% were worried about close family members getting the virus specifically. So you can imagine how this has resulted in high volumes of call intakes for Kids Helpline, which is a free 24/7 Australian telephone counselling service for young people. And even so, self-harm injuries were also higher across the population because as someone who's dealt with depression and anxiety in the past, I can tell you that it is very, very tough. It's really difficult to bring yourself to talk to someone about what you're feeling, and it's very hard to sort of like feel like there's someone out there who may understand and could help you going through that tough time and situation. So that is all without the virus, adding to the stress. With the virus happening, a lot of kids and a lot of their activities have been stopped because some of them find, that going outside, being active, interacting with other people is a way that they cope, and it's a thing that helps them go through those tough situations. But as I mentioned, with lockdown restrictions, it's very hard for them to actually go out there and interact with people socially which is really hard for them, and it's also very much, it's not helping them deal with some of these issues. So I understand that it is a pandemic and we have to look after ourselves for the safety of everyone, but it's also, we have to consider that this is a very tough time for young people, especially in this time of their lives where they're transitioning into adulthood. They have to have a lot of support around them if they want to grow up in a healthy lifestyle. So it's just been very hard for everyone, but specifically it's been extremely tough on young people. So I think that it's just a really awful thing they have to go through. Now I'm going to be talking about young people of color who I'm going to be referring to as POCs and their relationship with police and the Australian media. It is no secret that racism has existed for a really long time, and police brutality is like the main root and focus of all of it. And since COVID-19 has been widely reducing young people's mental health issues, these other issues have only escalated and gone worse. Since there's a lot of racism in the media portrayed by stereotypes, and there's rarely any positive acknowledgement towards POCs, it really damages a lot of their self-control and their feeling of belonging, like they belong in Australia. And a lot of them were born in Australia. So for them to feel like this isn't even their home, they don't feel welcomed, it's very hard on them, and it could add a lot to that whole issue of them dealing with things growing up. And with COVID happening, it hasn't been really helpful. And there have been a lot of young people who I've personally dealt with who have experience with bad cops than the supposed good cops. And it's really an interesting subject because I've dealt with both good and bad cops. So I can see from both sides that when young people feel fearful and distrustful towards the police, I can understand why that is, especially with police brutality being recorded on social media, specifically George Floyd, the American who lost his life due to police brutality at the time, which sparked an outrage during that. A lot of the young people back then were really afraid of engaging with police more so than usual. But I can also understand that from police's point of view that while there are some bad people there, they do have good cops there who do try their best to work towards mending that relationship with young people. But there's just a lot of baggage in that situation that it's a very tough and soft subject that I think it's best if young people and police could meet each other in the middle, with both of them acknowledging that while there are some bad people out there who do bad things, they shouldn't be seen as everybody else as part of the problem, because there are some people there who do try their best to sort of mend that relationship. And there are moments in the African community when they do feel connected to Australia. With the recent Olympics, Peter Bowl, when that happened, it was incredibly amazing. A lot of my family members and a lot of the young people in the community felt really positive and joyous despite COVID happening with lockdown restrictions, because in the media they got to see everybody supporting him and everybody, telling him that, as a African Australian, that, this is your home and we are really proud of you. And it was a good way for young people to feel connected to Australia and feel like there is hope there for them to grow up in an environment where they shouldn't feel afraid, they shouldn't feel discriminated against, and that if we had more positive moments like that in the media towards us, then I think it's a really good first step towards building that trust and relationship between young people of color and the African community. And slowly towards that, we can also try to mend that relationship with police. But in saying that, there are a lot of young people who probably would never feel fully confident or right, trying to mend that relationship, because as I mentioned, a lot of them have had really bad situations and circumstances where they've dealt with police. And I think where that trust isn't really given is because they feel that police should acknowledge that they do have some bad cops out there. They should acknowledge that the system is invertedly flawed, and they should acknowledge that while that while there are a lot of racist cops out there, most of them don't even get get prosecuted to the full extent of the law because they're police and they hold high positions in law enforcement. So for young people to really feel that that trust is earned, I think it's a really good way for police to acknowledge those faults they have and sort of like go towards mending that relationship with them. But yeah, as the main focus of my speech though is COVID specifically and how it's fully affecting a lot of young people and how it's not doing any favors towards any relationships that we've had. And it's really upsetting to see a lot of the young people feel trapped inside their own homes, not being able to go out and interact with people. So it's good that we have moments like this where we can tell them that we're there for them, we can fully support them, and despite going continuously into lockdown, you know, at the end of the day, COVID has brought out one good thing, because while there's been a lot of instances happening out in the world with COVID happening, everyone's been focusing on helping each other and everyone's been coming together, trying to see how we can get through this together as a whole, because end of the day, we're all human, we're trying to survive, and it's a good way for us to help each other out if we look out for one another, and especially keep in mind that young people need that extra bit of support, especially in this tough time. So yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah.
Thanks, Monica. Yeah, it's so important to hear what's impacting young people right now and how COVID's exacerbated these issues. So thank you so much for your insight. I am going to introduce Salva now. So Salva is going to be discussing youth-focused justice using Ubuntu principles, dealing with resettlement challenges and reconnecting and establishing strong family connections as a form of early intervention and crime prevention for young people. Just a little bit about Salva. She is the CEO and founder of AfriAusCare, as well as a mental health clinician. AfriAusCare uses Ubuntu principles and the positive change model to assist African Australian youth at risk, their families, and those from other culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds to live meaningful lives. So I'll hand over to Salva.
Thank you so much, Shaz, and also all staff at Neighbourhood Justice Centre for giving us this platform where we can actually talk to the real people who are looking after these young people who are causing problems, but there is always a reason why people behave in a different way. So I've entitled my presentation, Community Justice and Youth Ubuntu in Practice. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land which we meet today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay their respect to the elders, both past and present, their descendants and kin as the custodians of this land. A little bit about AfriAusCare. It is an organization that started on a kitchen table when I used to fight with my daughter. A lot has been covered. You can Google, you read a lot of articles. But it was founded in 2015 based on lived experiences of a family and also African people. Who are we now? We have become a group of professionals, and we provide health and well-being support services to African Australian youth at risk and their families. And we use the concept of Ubuntu and the positive change model. I'll talk more about Ubuntu later in my presentation. I always acknowledge ADRA. It's an organization. It's like a Salvos of Salvation Army. So it's Adventist Development Relief Agency. They gave us a 4-bedroom house. We don't pay anything. This is where we call home. We have recently named it AfriAusCare Community Village because we are like a village in Africa, but in Australia. And we have also been supported by Springvale Spanish Adventist Church. I want to take you a little bit history about African people. That continent of 54 countries, wherever you go, we practice Ubuntu. Even though we don't say the similar words, but it is Ubuntu. Ubuntu means I am because we are. We care for each other. We don't give a notice when you're going to someone's house. They'll give you food. That's why there's also a say, it takes a village to raise a child. Why are we here? We have come to Australia through different pathways. Some have come as refugees, some have come to following husbands like myself, and some have come for higher education and also employment. When we come in this country, we face a lot of challenges. I just want to do my presentation a little bit forward so that I can show you the challenges that people are facing. So there are so many challenges that people face, but I've just picked a few. Unresolved trauma from country of origin, as I've said, coming from a war-torn country, and also settling in Australia, language barrier, cultural shock, dysfunctional families like myself. My husband ran away and married a younger wife in my country. Because of practicing Ubuntu and positive change model, I've moved on. Barriers to access services, racism, Monica has already said, school dropouts and employment, underemployment, substance misuse, drinking, and cause illness issues in families, overrepresentation of African Australians in prison. I can emphasize, I had a meeting and I know at Parkville Youth Justice Centre, there's about 46% of young people there of African origin. We need to do something, and indeed we are working. And also another challenge that has been affecting African people is attempts to suicide or complete suicide. 2018, there were about 13 or 14 people who actually died because of complete suicide. So what are we doing as AfriAus Care? We use mainly a sense of belonging, trying to help people to understand that even though we have all these resettlement challenges, we can come up with projects, work with mainstream, work with the government so that we can resolve the issues. We cannot resolve everything, but it's getting a challenged child, one family at a time. So at AfriAus Care, those professionals, we use intensive, culturally appropriate interventions, and we use practice Ubuntu and positive change model, as I've said. What is positive change model? It's meeting a person at the time you are meeting them. If I am in court, I hear a prosecutor reading a brief, and what the young child did is horrible. I don't even, my heart don't miss a beat. Instead, I always say, you know what? There is a reason why this child was acting like this. So through our intensive support, we get intensive history and also supporting that person through cultural appropriate counseling, referral to the GPs, and the referral maybe to a psychiatrist or referral to a psychologist, and also working with a family using the Ubuntu model. I have seen many, many people getting better. But we use young people, we call them peer-to-peer restorative model. It's youth-led. Those young people who have come off those cracks, they are doing well. They are the ones to work with the other young people as leaders. Today at AfriAus Care, we have got young people who are doing case management, youth work. Now what they do, they go back where the problems are, and I'm telling you, results have been really good. So in Ubuntu in practice, what do we do? It's a holistic approach. So we have youth programs, we use primary interventions for those young people who haven't done anything. So it's about basketball, it's about assisting them to go to school, homework support, rehabilitation. Young people who are going to court, they need support, referring them to culturally appropriate lawyers. We work very closely with Daniel Ajak and some are private lawyers as well, just to mention a few. Rehabilitation is getting concentrated more of young people who are in jails. So family connection, what do they do when they come out of jail? Maybe if they had a drug and alcohol problem, referring them to clinics where they can get help, referring them to GPs, the list is going on. If people want to know more, they can contact me. Now, all this works effectively when we are dealing with the resettlement challenges, and I have seen families being reconnected. Recently, we have been working with the Department of Justice and Community Safety, but also the University of Melbourne. We want this to be evidence-based so that people can use, wherever they are African people, they are having challenges, they can use the methods that we use. Now, if you see here, we have got, it's called Ubuntu Empowering African Women. This project was funded by the Department of Justice. They wanted us to work with 15 women. 6 months, we have worked with 75 women. About 53 are working, and we are continuing to find jobs during the pandemic. Once you empower a woman, you tell her that there is something that you can do, you believe in them, they get empowered, and I can see women changing. You can see here we have got intensive English class. Most of these women now, they are working. We don't force them to come. They come to us. And when we are working with them, we talk about what is happening with their children. Under Ubuntu principles, the women now talk. This is what I'm doing. Or I'm using strict African family values, which don't work well at all with our young people. Once they change, starting taking their children as their friends, things are actually changing. Look here, you can see Honorable Minister Natalie Hutchinson wearing traditional wear when she came to open our program. And this is my daughter, Kwacha, who gave me a hell of a time. And that's why I opened the Afri-Oz Care. The examples that we use, real examples, are changing people's lives. Here again, women, you can see the mayor from Dandenong, the minister here, Julian Hill. Our center, the village, is a focal point where people are coming to meet real people with real problems. And these women, they are not ashamed. They talk, they know that it's a challenge. They have met a lot of challenges and they are looking for solutions. We have got our lawyer here from Monash Legal Center, Katia. She works with the women. This woman, she's a very powerful woman. She's the head of the Noel Women in Victoria, and that is me in our little kitchen cooking. You can see here, we have got a beautiful garden. Through the programs, we talk about the issues we are going through, and I can see that people are doing well. We have a peer-to-peer project in the city. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we haven't done more programs in the city. We assisted the girls here. We were meant to see about 20 girls. We have registered nearly 26 girls. Some of them have been going to court. Some were in jail, come out and assist them. You can see here we had visitors from the police in the southern region, Dandenong, but also in the city. Here, mother and daughter. And here, you know, there's a lot of anti-racism. So we are doing a project with Lindale Secondary College. There was a lot of problems there. I went because I was called to address the young people. So we spoke about what racism is and how they can defend themselves. And the outcome has been really great. Even the school has now changed the way young people are being treated. So we are empowering young people when they are young. And this time of the pandemic, the young people plus the older moms, we actually do a food relief program. So we assist the young people to work together with the older generation. Now you have heard about the Black Rhinos. It's a crime prevention program that was actually founded by myself and an ex-offender. Now we have got 3 teams in MMBL. 3 teams in MMBL, 2 teams in under 23, and there is another team. We have got a soccer team as well. Before the pandemic, we used to go to correctional centers. You can see there, Mangonet Correctional Center, where we did very well with offenders, assisting them before they come out from prison. We also had a trip to Lodon Prison, but nothing happened because of the pandemic. Here, the young boys, they are in MMBL. You can see very, very happy. I cannot point who and who, but some of these have faced challenges. They have been at Parkview, Malmesbury, or even the mainstream prisons, but now they're doing well. We also have a soccer team. We used to take them to Kwan Nga Correctional Centre, but because of the pandemic, we have stopped. We had a girls basketball team. Again, the pandemic, we are not doing anything much, but we are starting football for the girls. So we also do fashion. My daughter, she's a fashion designer. You can see all these young ladies and older ladies wearing her label. And here we had a program with Africa Day Australia. You can see Andrew Crisp over there and some senior police officers, and also Sheila Siwanda, the president of Africa Day Australia. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, we are going through a lot as African people, but we have been innovative, telling people what we are facing, and people are supporting us. I'm actually happy that the government and other organizations, they are now realizing that working with the grassroots communities, where the problem is, we are resolving the problems slowly by slowly. But it is also important to work together with mainstream services. For instance, when I heard that we were going to do some work with our neighborhood justice, I said, oh, this is great, because they are the people who actually see our young people in the time when they are in court. Then we can actually work together what we work as, using Ubuntu guidelines and also the positive change model, and also what they use. Together, I think if we can work well with all the departments, we can do well. So we are here as African people. We have problems, but we need to work together. The pandemic has actually added more problems to the challenges that we face, but we are working on the ground and we will continue. All what we need is support, not only for AfriOz Care. Go in all the regions, look which African organizations are actually working, supporting youth, support them. So that's all from me. I just love to do what we do, and it's great that we're given this platform. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Salva. I don't think it's possible to not be inspired every time Salva opens her mouth. So thank you so much for your presentation. And finally, we're going to be hearing from Kwan, who's going to be talking about diverting young people from the justice system and enhancing justice outcomes in the court space through innovations such as the young adult list at the NJC. A little bit about Kwan. She is the Neighbourhood Justice Officer at the NJC. She has a background in criminology and psychology, and prior to this role, she worked in various positions within Community Correctional Services. Kwan has been driving the development of the young adult list at the NJC, which deals with criminal matters where the defendants are aged 18 to 25. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Kwan.
Okay. So before I start, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and pay my respects to the elders past and present, and any of the Aboriginal communities who might be present with us today. I'm not going to go into too much about who the Neighbourhood Justice Centre is and what we do, because Shez has mentioned it earlier, and I'm sure some of you have watched the video or is aware about us. But essentially, we are a part of Magistrates Court Victoria, but we're not just a court. We are a community justice centre. The NJC, like Shez said earlier, was established in 2007 in response to the high crime rate in the city of Yarra. Traditional approaches to justice appears to be ineffective at the time, so the Labor government wanted to try something really different. And the NJC was inspired by the Red Hook Community Justice Centre in Brooklyn, New York. The NJC operates under the principle of community justice, which is a public safety framework that is designed to improve neighbourhoods by transforming high crime, socially disadvantaged places into community fit for people to live, work and raise families. We do that by focusing not just on the individual's criminal behaviour, but also working directly with the local community and organisations to address the broader social, political, economic, cultural and environmental factors that led people to committing crime in the first place. In doing so, we're promoting a more sustainable solution to crime. So central to the NJC model is a unique setup of a one-stop shop for justice. We have a multi-jurisdictional court that hear different matters such as criminal for adult and children, applications for intervention order, etc. And under our roof, we also house the police prosecutors, Fitzroy Legal Service, Victorian Legal Aid, Community Corrections. We also have the Client Services team, which is inclusive of a ton of different services that we contract via community agency. So there is a drug and alcohol counsellor on site from Odyssey House, a mental health clinician from St. Vincent's, a male family violence respondent worker from No to Violence, a victim support worker from Berry Street, etc. So the idea is that people will come in perhaps for their court matters, but they will then be able to access a range of different support that essentially might be contributing to address issues that might be contributing to the criminal offending in the first place. Because of the NJC's unique model, we have strong partnerships with local community agencies and have a strong presence in local forums and workshops. This allows us to observe any emerging justice issues and be responsive to it. And the development of the young adult list is an example of that. In 2008, our in-house community lawyers and corrections have observed a gradual but significant increase in the number of young people between the age of 18 to 25 presenting at court, and with really serious criminal matters, sometimes involving gang-related activities, and also really serious family violence matters as well. And a lot of them, we've also have a lot of young people being sentenced to community correction order from other court. There's certainly a service at an overrepresentation of African young people and other colored young people from immigrants and refugee background. I think the last time we kind of had a look at the statistics, there's about 2 to 3% of African young people, young African population in the city of Yarra. But at the moment, young people under the age of 25 from African background makes up about 25% of the correction caseload. So this situation is actually quite unique to the NJC, as traditionally our main clientele has been those well into the neighbourhood, well into the adulthood, so 30 years old and above. What we observed in the court space was echoed in other community forums as well. So there's a general consensus that young people are engaging in really dangerous behaviour at a very young age. So in 2019, we've gathered some relevant stakeholders in order to brainstorm possible response to these emerging issues. And those stakeholders include Youth Liaison Officer from Victoria Police, Fitzroy Legal Service, Legal Aid, Youth Justice, Community Corrections and Yarra Youth Services. One of the proposals that came out of those discussions was the implementation of a young adult list. The list manages criminal matters involving young adults aged 18 to 25 and focuses on addressing the specific risks and needs of this clientele. The list is intended to target relatively complex and serious matters and aim to enhance sentencing outcomes for young adults. Those whose matter can be dealt with at a single hearing will remain in the general list in order to avoid net widening. So separating the matters of young adults from general criminal lists will highlight the relevance of age and result in a greater emphasis on tailoring proceedings and responses in a developmental appropriate way. The list is expected to facilitate timely hearings and resolutions. To respond to young adults I guess, perception of the passage of time and the potential to make really significant rehabilitative changes within a relatively short period in comparison to older adults. Young people, due to their immaturity, are particularly vulnerable and susceptible to negative influence. Having them attend court on a specific day would kind of shield them from potential criminogenic influences from older adults in the general criminal list. Whilst almost, a majority of defendants attending the NJC can and often do access a range of internal service, it is recognised that young people often require ongoing support beyond the duration of their court cases. So the continuity of care and the opportunity to form meaningful relationships with personnel involved in their case have a really significant impact on their responsiveness and engagement with intervention. You might have picked up on earlier slide about client services team that we actually don't have a youth specific service within the team. As I mentioned before, the NJC traditionally have a very small number of cases involving a young person until about 2 years ago. So obviously, with time changing, we need to be really responsive to community needs, and we are a government organisation, so sometimes we are confined by, budgets and priorities of the magistrate courts. So whilst we weren't able to immediately reprioritise our budget to contract a youth-specific worker on site, we've started developing some partnerships with youth-specific services in the local community that provide substance abuse treatment, mental health service, outreach support, and educational training. So our partners including the Yarra Youth Services, Jesuit Social Services, Odyssey House, and the Reconnect program, which is funded by the Department of Education. So these services are committed to either have a presence on site or have a dedicated worker available during the list in order to facilitate timely referral and a transparent collaboration between the court and the community. And referral to this external service in the community helps to ensure that the young person can remain supported and connected to the local community once they leave the justice system. So we're not we're not developing an dependency on in-house justice-based services. So some points of difference between how we run the young adult list and the general adult list is that whilst the young adult list requires no legislative changes, court approaches and procedures are adapted in the way that is appropriate for the developmental stage of the young person. And we aim to enhance engagement from the young person during the hearing. So for example, I would sit at the bar table during all the matters on the young adult list, so that I can act as a triage point for the young person and ensuring that appropriate referrals are being made to support services at the earliest stage of their contact with the court. The accused, the young person, is allowed to sit at the bar table with their support services, pre-pandemic time, of course. And they would be asked as to how they would like to be addressed by the court, whether by their first name or by their last name, and what kind of pronouns they like to be using. Family members can be introduced to the magistrate by the legal representative and speak during the proceedings if they wish to do so. And all parties involved are committed to using informal and non-legal language to enhance the young person's understanding of the process. And so with the young adult list, obviously it kind of was in development before the pandemic. So there's a lot of changes that happened over the last 2 years. And we've taken a bit of an action learning approach because we recognise a community needs are changing over time as the circumstances of the world are changing all the time. We are constantly reviewing the list and looking at what's working and what's not, and how we might adjust it so that it still stays relevant to what the community requires of us at the time. It's about fitting the need of the people rather than having the people to fit in the need of the court. So yeah, that's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions about the young adult list in the NJC, please feel free to contact me.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope you've taken a lot from this session. I know I have, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, guys. Thank you.